Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Kosa Music, inviting you to listen in conversations with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me Mr. Joe Lamond, who was president of NAMM for many, many years. And I'm so happy finally we were able to get this together to have you on board. Thanks so much, Joe, for joining me today on this conversation.
Pleasure to be here, Aldo. Good to see you.
So before we go into the conversation of shaping your journey, just tell us a little bit about, just to contextualize this, where was the beginning for you? I know you are a drummer.
Yeah.
And where was that first spark? Where was that first flame that started it for you?
Yeah, that was the beginning of all this career, which started with a drum. I think I had seen a marching band and a snare drum player or snare drummers. And, from that moment on, for some reason, I was probably 6, maybe 7 years old, enamored with the sound and the power of the drum. And I think it wasn't till about 2 years later, I actually got my first drum, a snare drum, and then ultimately a drum set. Probably by the age 10, I was playing a set of drums in a band in my local neighborhood.
Nice. And then you studied after that?
I had the more rock and roll approach, which was my father came home one day and handed me the Creedence Clearwater Revival album, Green River, and said, "Here, play like this." I actually had the opportunity to share that with the band at one point, and they laughed about that. But yeah, in school we had music classes. Luckily, I was growing up in an era in New York where we did have music schools and it was general music, and then it was a more jazz band. I never did the marching band, but so I had private teachers and traditional school teachers as well.
And then you went on the road, right? I mean,
yeah, like a lot of people in this industry, we have multiple loves. I had 2 great loves. One was the outdoors and the other was music. So I actually went to college for my love of outdoors. I was going to be a forest ranger. I was a forestry major in upstate New York, in Lake Placid of all places, which I know isn't too far from you. We spent a few weekends in Montreal back in the day.
Nice.
But ultimately, that path, I found that, okay, forestry was wonderful and beautiful, and I loved what that had to offer. But music kept pulling me over here and pulling me over here. And I had a girlfriend in California at the time and ended up going to San Francisco and seeing the music scene there. I was 21 years old, about to turn 22, got out of school and moved to California. And from then on until basically this day, my life has been involved in music in one aspect or another.
Yeah, and I mean, at some point you're also like tour managing.
Like a lot of, like, you've been to the NAMM show.
Yes.
I've been to the NAMM show since 1983. You think of that population of people involved in the trade. It's the artist, it's the the maker of the equipment, it's the sellers of the equipment, and everything that's involved in this ecosystem. We're all players at the heart of it. We all, I used to look at the NAMM show floor and think, yes, there's tens of thousands of people doing different things that make all this work. But at the heart of it, we all just wanted to be in the Beatles, And
Yes.
So, yeah, performing was my thing, and recording. And I had a lot of wonderful years, mostly in my 20s, through the Northern California music scene, playing with great bands, getting, brushes with record deals and publishing deals, playing with a artist who had a hit song, Tommy Two-Tone, the phone number song, 867-5309, touring the world with that. And so I wouldn't ever discourage someone from pursuing that dream of being the performer. I loved every minute of it. I did it. And ultimately it led me to find other skill sets, which really led me to business. But those who are involved in music, at the heart of it, we're all, I think, linked and forever linked through our love and passion of music. But those playing years, the touring years, ultimately, you're right, becoming a tour manager, working with one of my heroes, Todd Rundgren, and Jefferson Starship, and bands in the Bay Area. That was the bridge between performing and business. And it was an integral part of my background, part of my development, part of my growth. Um, One couldn't have happened without the other, and vice versa. So it's all connected. The musical journey we're all on leads you different places, but it's all connected. All connected.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting that, at some point you decide you're going to go more business or less business. I mean, for me, it's one and the same. It's
Yeah.
just taking care of business, being a professional and doing more
Yeah.
of one day you have to read contracts and you have to figure that out. And the next day you have to be in the studio and figure that out. So for me, there's no difference. So I always respect people who understand that duality, right? And and
Well,
then
it's a way to be 60 years old and have had a wonderful career. Sometimes you do blend the both. Now, I see your background. If we were to turn this camera around, you'd see my acoustic set and my electronic set, which I will not name names because I am, through my NAMM world, very Switzerland and non-denominational. But within 3 or 4 feet of me are my two favorite things to do right there. So yeah, you never leave it. You never stop. And
yeah.
I hope I never do.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic, and I mean, I've always enjoyed going to NAM for many reasons. I mean, everybody was there, so you get to see all your friends who you never get to see otherwise. Learning, I mean, those breakfast meetings that happen at NAM, I would learn so much. Just expanding your own world, right? Was that an idea that you came up with, or was that happening before you? That whole breakfast
Well,
education thing.
think about NAMM going back to 1901 when it was formed in New York, and the iterations that have happened since then at the time, piano was the main instrument. And at the time, pianos were delivered by horse-drawn wagon. So, that's the industry we are all still a part of, and it's evolved so many times since then. There were no electronic instruments yet. It was Thomas Edison debuting some of these great products at a NAMM show that
Wow.
led us into this next phase. So, it's changed a million times, and it will change again. This era that you and I have been fortunate enough to be a part of has been a very communal and growing community time of NAMM. That was one of my goals, was to unify all of the industry, not only the instrument makers and sellers, but those involved in performing, those involved in teaching, those involved in the touring professions, everyone involved. Having been on tour so many times, I realized this is a family. Lighting guys are just as much a part of this as the sound
Yeah.
guys, just as much as part of the backline guys and the performers.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a tour bus or tour trucks, there's the hierarchy, right? The lighting guys are in first, doing the rigging and hanging everything. Then the sound guys, the last to come in, are doing the back line and setting up all the instruments, and then the band sound checks, and then the whole cycle at 8 o'clock. All I know is, even though these different groups sometimes don't even get along, we were always like, oh, those lighting guys got it so easy. They're sleeping on the bus all day. Well, they had to get up at 6 a.m. They're there at loadout. The sound guys thought we always had it easy as back-on guys, and everyone thought the performers had it simple, yet they had their own challenges. So even though this little system on the road involved multiple different skill sets, at 8 o'clock, when the lights came on and the first song was counted in, the first downbeat, all of it worked.
Yeah.
That was my vision of NAMM, that it takes all of this, all of it. A music teacher putting an instrument to a fourth grader's hand for the first time. The person mixing the Coachella Festival. Everyone involved back in some, R&D lab thinking up the next electronic breakthrough in musical instruments or sound products or software. It took all of that. And the metaphor for me was 8 o'clock. Drummer counts it in, first downbeat, roar of the crowd. And so to me, that's what I really had this vision of, what making that the NAMM show floor, because I thought they all have to work together. A school teacher at the NAMM show may have an idea for a product that solves a problem in the classroom that a software engineer working for a major manufacturer may go, never thought of it that way. Next thing you know, next NAMM show, there's a new product line that solves that problem. But that interaction hadn't occurred, if they hadn't met, if user hadn't met maker, if seller hadn't met marketing, or, again, and this is globally, by the way, not just within the United States or Canada or South America or Asia. This is a global coming together. 130 countries on average come to an NAMM show. Right. So that was it. That's the community. You were a part of it. But that's what we had tried to build. I've been at NAMM 25 years. I've been going to NAMM since I was 22 years old, 1983. So it's all I knew, but it was the part of every one of my parts of the journey. Performer, road manager, worked in music stores, hung speakers in churches and office buildings, in stadiums. All those things I did at one point or another, mainly because, sometimes you just need a job and you take a keyboard tech for a Starship tour. Yeah, I can do that. I really can't, but I'll figure it out. But I thought, that's us. That is us. You've done so many different things in this industry. What do you call? Are you called the teacher? Are you called the drummer? Are you called recording artist? We're all the same. And that's what the vision was for NAMM. Get us all together, get all of us knuckleheads together once a year, twice a year when we do Nashville, and just good things will come of it. That's it. That's the vision. That's as simple as a drummer can make a vision, bring the whole world together, the whole ecosystem, set up this platform where they can just have a great time for 4 or 5 days, and then just sit back and let it all happen and watch in wonderment of the good things that come of it. Yeah, that to me was the NAMM show.
Yeah, and I mean it's a great vision, and you really, I mean, I watched through over the years, watching in those breakfast meetings and anything that went on, and the whole idea. I mean, what unfolded during those 4 or 5 days that we were there was amazing, because I got a chance to connect with all the endorsement companies that I was dealing with, and you get to see like all the top people, not just in PASIC or PIS, but now everybody at a larger in a larger forum, right? Because after a while, we are not just drummers and percussionists; we are also musicians who deal with other people in the field. So dealing with people and running into people who are in mixing, in instrument designs, and the top of the people. I met so many great people that I always wanted to speak to, but to make a phone call to the company, that doesn't really work well. But so this was a great way to. This is a great opportunity for anybody to do that.
I mean, we're creatives, and creatives are I think by nature and look, I almost look at it as the United Nations. I mean, where else in the world can you get 128, 130 countries together? Sometimes countries that are actually, throughout NAMM's history, even at war with each other, and no one fights. There's no fights at the NAMM show. You can find me any other place in the world, you can get 128, 130 countries together, and there's no fighting. NAMM show. I'll give you one small example of these interactions. You and I think I would just run into you randomly at the shows. I think in the elevator of the Hilton Hotel, I ran into you on a Sunday, last day of the show. And it was the usual, 90 seconds of, hey, Aldo, what are you doing? Hey, Joe, what's up? What's up? Downloading what's happening. And I happened to mention that I was going to Cuba with my business group. And you said, you need to look up this drummer. And you gave me the name, or we emailed afterwards.
Piloto. Yeah.
And because of that connection, I got to meet him. I toured around Havana. I got to understand his life and his music, and he inspired me as a drummer to this day. So that was a 90-second interaction at the NAMM show. Multiply that by 115,000 people, and you just see the ripple effect. But you changed my life in a 90-second interaction, because I had a connection now to Havana and the music that I just loved from the inside scoop from one of the greatest artists in the country.
Yeah,
never had that before. I would have never had that had we not had that interaction. So that's just one small example of the magic that comes out when you get all these, these big tribe together.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember that. I had almost forgotten about that, because I mean, we're all involved in so many different things. When our paths cross and something that we could be helpful with, I said, man, if you're going to Cuba, then this is what you got to do. These are the people you need to call. And I was so happy to see that there was a delegation going to Cuba, that you were going there, and there was a mission. I mean, we've been building myself with COSA these cultural bridges for over 20 years. And I have a book that I wrote on Cuban rhythms for percussion and drum set, with Alfred. And then in Cuba, they've adopted that book now, the Ministry of Culture, as an official book in the music schools in Cuba, which was like, what? So that was really nice. And so these building of bridges are two-way streets, and they help everybody. That helps them, helps me, helps people who are interested in something. Then we can give them something that we're involved in.
Breaking down the barriers,
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And I think most of us who get that idea of, we have to have purpose, and part of our purpose is to make the world a better place, in the way that we know how. I'm not a mechanic, but in my world, I will definitely make the world a better place. Or ideas that come up, I have I'm a partly inventor. You may not know this part, but during the whole COVID thing, all these ideas I had, I said, now I can sit down and deal with lawyers and get the patents and all that, the crazy stuff, all those long hours. So I have 7 or 8 of these, and I decided to bring them out one at a time. The first one is coming out this year. It's a music stand. Of all things. And this music stand, there are 4 or 5 different versions of this that we developed. The first one is coming out this year, and it's a mallet hang stand. It goes on the frame of the instrument, which then allows you to move your instrument around with the music on it. So it's a universal, and Manhasset is manufacturing it. So you'll see that at the next.
I can't wait to
show.
see it at the NAMM show.
Yes. So I'll be there with a different hat, I hope. And but these are ideas that come from being out there, being interested, being curious. As you said earlier, solving problems. And I met people at the NAMM show, people at Manhasset, and other people who I said, oh yeah, this is the person that I would love to connect with when this is ready. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, here's what when I think of you or many of the people I know from my NAMM world, what this industry allows and actually helps, flourish is that through this journey that we go on, each of us through time discovers the things that we're really good at. And they emerge at different times in your life and sometimes different environments. But it's the crucible you go through that ends up making someone be such a pivotal figure, because they might have gone in this door, but they realize at a certain point, I'm really good at, I love this, but I'm also really good at that. And so some of us drift into business or into the studio or into manufacturing new products or ideas. And some of the performers who stay continually evolve into new forms and to new, Bill Bruford's still always one of my heroes. And I think that was one of the favorite interviews I've ever seen with Bill, is the one you did.
Thank you.
We ultimately, through this journey, find out what our superpower is, and so these types of interactions are for anyone who might be watching this. That's the encouragement that I would ever give is, through this journey, you're going to be exposed to new things, and you may find, that resonates with me. There's something there, and again, for me, the performing was great, but then I've started doing, it was funny with Tommy Tutone, the one-hit wonder guy, right? And as the song became less and less famous and the shows got smaller, the tours got, lower budget, there weren't so many people. And so we didn't have this big support crew. Well, along the line, I'm realizing that, hey, Tommy, let me do the advance work. I'm home for a couple of weeks before the tour. Let me do some of the advance work. And by the way, on the road, I can help actually do some of the settlements. So here I am advancing the tours, going on tour, drumming, and then at the end of the show, going to the box office and selling up with a promoter, and then going back and paying everybody. And rinse, repeat, repeat, go, huh? And making a little extra money doing it. There's my drumming salary, and then there's maybe not the whole tour manager salary, but I get a little more. And I realized I happen to have a knack for that. I happen to have a knack for the people side of it and the numbers side of it. And the drumming is great too, but I realized ultimately that maybe I was better suited for the business side. Now that evolved, but I think the lesson was be open to those hints, because they're clues to say, this is what I really we're all gifted in some ways. Every human being has a gift. The trick is to discover what it is. And for me, it happened to be in business and people, and again, uniting people. That was maybe a gift that I had. I could play drums. I could get through. I was a decent drummer. Obviously, these heroes that we talk to and meet and you interview, they're really, really good drummers. And so,
Yes.
my superpower might not have been in, odd time signatures like Bill Bruford. My superpower might have been going to Capitol Hill and arguing for some language in a music education bill that would provide more funding. And I discovered that, and then I went that way. So, but it takes time, and it takes self-awareness to know that while you're doing and again, working at a music counter in a music store, you could argue, well, it's an entry-level position, but it's actually one of the best training grounds for this entire industry is to work in a music store. You not only learn the gear and how business works, but you learn people. You learn the different personalities. So, I worked music retail for ultimately almost 16 years while I was doing all these other things. I'd always come on the road, back from the road, go to the music store, on the road, coming back to a day job. But you learn along the way, as you have, that I'm good at organizing things. I'm going to organize a festival in Cuba to celebrate this music that I love so much. Well, not everyone does that, Aldo.
Yes.
Matter of fact, that'd be about you. There's only one. It's you. So, but you had to discover that along the way. You didn't fully emerge from the womb knowing that you're going to be doing music festivals in Cuba. So anyway, that's the lesson. Always be open to the clues that lead you to your superpower inside, and then have the courage to pursue that.
Sure. No, absolutely. And things speak to you, and you make certain decisions. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences. And it's funny because I was doing a podcast with Graham Lear, the original drummer for Gino Vanelli, who...
don't forget Santana.
I was just going to say, who then went on to Santana. And
don't forget the 16-year-old at Woodstock. There was that,
I mean, he was with Santana for 22 years after Gino Vanelli. But here's the funny story. I dug up a photo. When I was in high school, I must have been in grade 11, and I became head boy, and I was kind of with the team there. We were running the school, and we were trying to put it back on the map. And one of the first things we did was an all-boys school, and we had no, how would you call it? No generator anymore. Everybody was like down and out. The school, the magazine, the school yearbook didn't happen anymore. All of that. So we were reviving everything. And I was up there. So we're going to change everything. Our football team's going to win this year, all of that. So what we did, first thing we did, we put on a big concert, a benefit concert to give money to charity. So the whole thing was so successful that we were on the front page of the local paper, and the check was so big that I became really famous for giving that check. But here's the funny thing: I had a photo of me sitting in the field where we had the concert, and we had hired this group called George Oliver Natural Gas from Toronto. And Graham was the drummer. Yes.
Wow.
So and I brought that up. I said, you won't believe this. Because I knew Graham when he was in Montreal working with Gino Vanelli. I knew all the guys. Some of the guys were going to university at McGill. So we all kind of knew each other. And I said, we had met before I knew him in Montreal, because I used to live in Ottawa.
Mhm.
And I told him about this picture, and he says, "Oh my God, I remember that concert, because the guy I used to study with, I told him I was going to be in Ottawa playing this concert at high school. So they came out. It was a big thing for me." And I said, "It's amazing that I have this picture of us sitting on the side of the stage, and we knew each other when we were like, what, 16, 17?" So,
Wow. No, Mark Craney was also one of my favorite Gino Vanelli drummers. Oh, what a guy.
yes, he was great. He was great.
So many great players. Yeah. So many great stories. I think that's the other thing about our industry. We have stories.
No, it's amazing. I mean, some good ones and some good ones, and some ones that you kind of vaguely remember for sometimes for good reasons. Funny thing. No, it's funny because Graham said to me, he says, "By the way, I have your book, and I want to thank you for straightening out something I did not know." I said, "Graham, you don't have to do that. I know I spent 3 years working on that book, and I made sure I explored, worked at everything, making sure everything was okay. I sat with Changuito, I sat with Piloto, I sat with all the guys, making sure that I didn't say anything that was not the way
Yeah.
it was, and I didn't want it to be about me. I developed the methodology, but the material, it's you guys. I didn't invent anything. I just put it together in such a way that it really made sense, with 78 play along tracks, and not just 3 seconds, but real tunes, the whole bit." And no, he says, "No, no, no, no. What I have to tell you, because when you transformed all the rhythms to the drum set, which was the whole idea, it's learning the traditional rhythms. All the orchestration is there, all the instruments, and then ideas on how to transform that to the drum set. So when you came to the cha-cha-cha, you close the hi-hat on the end of 1 and the end of 3. I always did it on 2 and 4. And I said, well, I mean, it's just logic, because the guiro, you close it on the end of 1. If you listen to it, that's where the hi-hat would close, and that's what I'm suggesting. He says, "Yeah, but I always just used to do it on 2 and 4, something like that." He
Yeah.
says, "So you really cleared me up." And I said, "But you were playing with Santana for 22 years and nobody ever said anything?" But but the funny thing about this is it just humanizes, no matter how great we are. And he's certainly one of the great drummers on the planet. There was something you don't know, something you haven't really explored, or something slips by. We have so much to learn forever.
Well, I'd even say that he just made it his own as an American rock drummer. I mean,
Yeah.
John Bonham doing the Purdy Shuffle, "We Get Fool in the Rain." It's very different. Bernard wouldn't have played it that way, but he made it his own. So,
Yeah.
I love that borrowing and the constant reinvention of one artist taking and reinterpreting something different.
Yeah, and we do that all the time. And speaking about Bernard Purdy, apparently, I mean, I studied with Bernard, and he's been at the COSA camps, and we were good friends. But what I didn't know was he was really huge in Europe, and especially England. So everybody over there
Yeah.
was listening to everything he was doing, much more than even we were. And so they picked up on all of that. And what you said about John Bonham, that's amazing that he learned from him.
Yep.
It's
Just at this last NAMM show, I got Bernard and I were the two drummers for one of the hotel gigs. I mean, so I got to play with Bernard. I mean,
nice.
those
I
are the things
missed.
that only happen at the NAMM show, right?
Yeah. Oh, the name is fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
all those people in a room, and all of a sudden, I remember once I was there was a demonstration of synths, and I'm standing there in one of the booths, and then somebody knocks on my shoulder, and it was and I looked this way, but I had to look up because it was Stevie Wonder and his
Yeah,
entourage. He's
yeah.
asking me if I could just because he, we need to have a better look, and it's just nice to see everybody out there, and we're in some on some level like in the same place. We're all looking at what's
That's the
interesting.
difference. That's the difference at the NAMM show. Not to keep talking about the NAMM show, but that's the difference. When artists are there, they're not artists per se. They're journeyman players looking for the next tool for their
Yeah.
own journey. I don't care what artist it is, and you can name them all that have been walking on the show forever. Since you think about back decades and decades, they get to go there and not be like celebrities. They're to us, they're another artist. And that's the beauty, I think, of why they enjoy going, because they can be seen as a true journeyman artist while they're there. Not like, hey, can I get your autograph? Because no, this is like,
That doesn't
that's a really
happen.
cool new instrument. Let me check that out. Stevie Wonder's the epitome of that. But yeah, no, I think that's part of the beauty. One quick story on just that serendipity of drummers. We there's a couple, many, but one of the years we did a concert with Yamaha, and it was the backing band, and all these people would come out. I think it was a kind of a tribute to Michael McDonald. But the percussion section was Alex Acuna and Steve Gadd. So after the show was over, each night, I mean, the NAMM show, they were rehearsing for a couple nights. I would run down to the rehearsal where they were practicing with these different walk-on artists, and one was Kenny Loggins. So I'm sitting around the drum riser, just basically at Steve Gadd's feet, right? And just, they don't know, he doesn't know who I am. And I'm just like watching everything, and Alex and him talking. And they had just rehearsed, I think, This Is It. This Is It, yeah, by Kenny Loggins. And so there's, they'd run through it once, and then Kenny's talking to someone, and Alex and Steve are talking like, did I do that right? And Alex goes, I don't know. They're messing with something. He goes, and Alex goes, you played on the record, didn't you? And Steve goes, yeah, man, I don't remember. Only one of the biggest hits ever, and they're trying to work out like some chippy hi-hat part or something. But Alex finally dawns on him, dude, you played on the record, didn't you? They go, might have. Hey, if any of us played on one of Kenny Loggins' biggest hits, I think I'd remember.
Oh yeah, but
Steve Gadd played on so many hits. It's like, yeah, I think I might have, but I don't remember what I did. So anyway, just one of the many. And then one more, just not to bore everybody, but I remember at the close of one of the NAMM shows, so it's 6:00, and everyone's kind of working out of the hall and into the kind of the convention center's atrium. And I looked up, and it was, and I don't know if I have everyone right, but I think it was Steve Gadd, Peter Erskine, I think it was Greg Bissonette, might have been one or two others, just standing there like they just come out of one of the exhibits. And they're just standing there talking, like, and there's people milling around, and again, it's the end of the show, so it's kind of chaotic. And I just stopped and looked at, there is probably 6 of the drummers that influenced my life more than anything in the world.
right.
They're standing right there, and they're probably talking about where to go to dinner. It's as casual as that. And I'm looking at this in my mind, I'm going, the amount of recorded music that these collective people have played on, and they're just standing there in the hallway of the NAMM show, and no one's even stopping.
Yeah.
And I remember just standing there looking at it and going, I'm going to remember this moment. I mean, it's just one of those, because I saw them as people. I saw them as part of our little world, and it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was part of that world too.
Yeah.
But just to see the casualness of it, and like I say, in my mind's eye, I imagine the conversation going, yeah, you want to go over here for dinner? No, I was there last night. I want to go over here. I mean, it could have been that casual, they were just probably hanging out together. So I thought that was a special moment of, one of millions of them. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember with Steve Gadd, I was, when I was at university studying my undergrad, I would fly to New York every month to study with different people.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole idea originally was to move to New York and be the studio musician in New York. So I was being introduced to different people. And Steve Gadd actually would take me around to many of the studio sessions that he was doing.
Yeah.
He was driving a Honda Civic at the time. And I would just be a fly on the wall, just watching him work and learning the the mindset that he was working with,
Yeah.
and that taught me a lot.
Oh,
You know,
that's priceless. Totally
yeah,
priceless. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. What were
Well,
the what were
I guess what thing, and this is kind of probably going to be a lot of drummer percussionists listen to this type of thing, but there is a fraternity within this part of the industry, to me, in the percussion side,
Yep.
that I often don't see with other instrument categories. I don't see it with I just don't see like that vision I just had about those drummers hanging out together. I've never seen a group of lead singers at an AM show hanging out in that way. I just never have. Maybe they have, but I just haven't seen it. The amount of collaboration that happens with drummers, the amount of support, the amount of sharing and lifting up. Hey, come to my session. I want to have you watch this, or let me introduce you to this person or that person. There is, and I don't say that to denigrate any other instrument category, but I do believe in this world. And maybe it's because of our function as the anchors. Maybe it's our function as the keepers of the feel that makes us all. I mean, we're competitive, of course, but I think in our competitiveness, we're also very, very deep collaborators. So I think there's something about that I've always loved about the drumming community that is different than others, and I can see that at a NAMM show in front of my eyes how that is different. So we have something special, and it's not to be taken for granted. We
yeah.
should never take this for granted. Always do what they did for you or what they did for me. Lift up the next group.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've seen it so much with I mean, the COSA camps that we would do in Vermont. We would have sometimes 25 or 28 artists on site. So you have everybody from Neil Peart to Steve Smith, or we have Steve Gadd here. All of these people, percussionists, drummers, and there's so many different styles, so many different ideas. I mean, when Alex would be there and somebody else would come into the room, and everybody just plays, you could have 20 musicians, drummers, percussionists, and still it wouldn't get old. It still wouldn't get too busy because they all know what to do. And they're sharing. I mean, they're saying, oh, check this out.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see that? Oh, try this out. Oh, how did you do that? And it was always, it's always been like that. I mean, in any situation that I can remember, and I just had a flash of Carmine Appice once, because he'd been to COSA 2 or 3 times. I remember he was there once, and there was Dominic Cuccia, who's a kind of a military drumming style, the old style, the 1812. And he was there, and he told me, he says, one of my favorite drummers ever is here, Carmine Appice. I'm going to have to go to his class. So everybody would be going to each other's classes.
Yeah.
And then we would feature each night a 15, 20-minute set of each of the artists. They'd get like 4 artists each night. They would have their own sets. And I remember once Dominic comes up to me, he says, Carmine just asked me to play with him in his set tonight. I don't know what he wants to do, but I can't believe it. So anyway, Carmine said, I asked Carmine, I says, what's that about? He says, I've always wanted to have like these bass drummers and play along. So he's the guy. So Carmine did this whole thing with a duo with Dominic playing, marching bass drum, and he was doing a duet with him. That was, I mean,
yeah.
2 guitar players may not do that.
I don't know why it is, but I'm glad it is.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing, and I think even the cultural thing. There are so many different cultures that, I mean, no matter how much we all know, there's so much we don't know, and our curiosity is always tickled, and you're always asking. And I see people always, myself included, how do you do that? Or what's that about? I mean, now I'm mixing Southern Italian tarantella, tamborinello with a drum set, and then djembe with some conga stuff. Mixing it and see what works and what we can make of it. This is our world, right?
Yeah, yeah, we're lucky to do it. Yeah.
What are some of the some of the really neat, apart from what you've already mentioned, some of the things at NAM that you saw, because here's a place where everybody would come together, and that let's just say that you pushed, promoted, and made sure it happened in those, because you were there what, 25
Yeah,
years or something
25
like that.
years. Bringing the touring people in. If you remember the convention center, there's a whole new hall called the Anaheim Convention Center North, and it was a big 2-story, hundreds of thousands of square feet. We had a new hall. And it was about the time I was working on this vision called Crossroads, which was, I really wanted that. We really wanted that event to be the crossroads of the entire world's musical ecosystem. But live event technology is a whole world unto itself, and they speak a different language. They speak a different. They have a different timing cycle of new gear introduction than maybe musical instruments. But it's sound equipment, it's lighting equipment, it's video equipment, and it's everything involved from the rigging and safety elements of bringing all these people together at concerts. And so really took some concerted effort to find out who were the tribal leaders within those communities around the world, work with them, get to earn their trust, learn what their needs were, and then earn their trust over time. And ultimately, I think the 2020 show, right before COVID, really culminated in that complete vision of all of the groups coming together. So to me, in particular, to answer that question, one of them would be, it's in writ large, it's called the event technology segment, and basically everything involved in anything a live event. So that to me was the missing part of the kind of this 3-legged stool in a way. And so that to me was a really important part, and they enjoyed being there, and they enjoyed, this was built up over the 10 years, but I think it culminated in 2020. It rejuvenated a lot of them who were musicians at heart. And yes, they're over in, this area where these, very large frame consoles are being displayed, but then they run over to the guitar hall, or they run over to the drum area. And so I thought that was a particularly, and good for the industry too, because I think that cross-pollination really helped, especially at a time where event safety was so important. There's a group I'm a part of called the Event Safety Alliance. And if you're going to bring, hundreds of people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people or more together, our industry hasn't maybe really thought, and we're getting there, we need to do more of it, thought about the responsibility of safely bringing all these people together. And it's not until a tragedy occurs somewhere that it's maybe brought to the surface again. But having the educational sessions at the NAMM show now for even school gatherings, how to put an event on safely. We all have very sophisticated technology now, lighting and video is part of every show in addition to sound. But bringing people together and doing it safely is, again, that was a kind of a bonus part of bringing that part into the show. We were able to convey that educational aspect across to the other segments that they might not have had access to. And so all that is just to say that idea of, crossroads is the word we used. We use the word crossroads because, I felt the importance of having done all these different jobs in the industry, realizing that we were the crossroads. This is where all this gathered. I thought we wanted to be that globally. We wanted to be the global crossroads. So that was another iteration of that word to me, was globally, the old Silk Road crossroads, And then this is in maybe the last 10 years, we've all seen it. The industry, I felt, was at a crossroads. The technology that was coming into play, the evolution of musical styles, musical distributions of those styles, and how people learned and shared music was all just being thrown up in the air, cut up, and it was all falling into new places. So I thought the industry was at a crossroads. And then it's just a great concept, going to the corner of the crossroads, selling your soul to learn a couple of blues licks, Robert Johnson. So I just thought it had this musical connotation too. So that became our rallying cry: crossroads, bring them all together at our crossroads. But that was really, I think, in recognition of the changes that are occurring right now. And by the way, all the pandemic did was just accelerate those changes, right? Right now, I'm probably spending hours a day studying AI, reading about AI, and trying to get a better understanding of not only the impact, but the opportunities of AI in music. So yeah, the changes are only coming faster and faster and faster. And, we'll need a platform like the NAB show or a virtual version as we did during the pandemic to make sure that we move together in a way that brings as many people along as we can, benefits the concept of music making, however it's done, because it will change again. But the idea that nothing ever stays the same,
Yeah.
and from one year of Crossroads to the next, there's some familiarity, but each year everything else underneath it is going to be reborn. New instruments, new technologies, new people in new roles. But the idea of bringing them, having that platform to help amplify the change and accelerate the change. Look, who wants to do the same thing over again?
Oh, yeah.
Look, our instruments, granted, go back to an early human stretching an animal hide over a log. We'll stipulate that. We do probably are due for some change in our little world. Maybe others, we have a board member who runs a software company, and his products that he released that morning have already been updated by noon with a new code set. So there's some instrument categories that are becoming iterated by the hour. Others are, like the piano is 323 years old now, since the invention of the piano, virtually unchanged. So we have this combination of tradition and new, but styles change. Name me an artist that you and I love that is playing exactly the way they did 20 years ago. Who
I
would
can't think
want
of
to?
one.
That's boring. We
Yeah,
want to change. Artistically, we need to change. We have this inherent desire to change. And so I think that's, while we don't like change sometimes as humans, we need to change. And this industry will change, music will change. And I just can't wait to see what comes next. I think it's going to be fascinating. There'll be winners and losers out of it, as there has been every major upheaval, whether it was MIDI or electronic music. Don't forget, in the United States in the early 40s, Musicians Union went to Congress to lobby to outlaw recorded music because it was going to put too many musicians out of work. There was literally a movement in Congress to try and have some laws passed that would, eliminate or strictly, restrict recorded music. Well, next thing you know, all these artists have recorded music careers. So they just tried to fight the change at first, then realized, oh, wow, this change is actually really good for us. So this next round will be very similar. Parts of it will try and fight the change. Others will adapt quickly and then find out that it's now another big runway of opportunity. But we're on the, mark my words, we're not going to date when this is, but from this moment on, the world will not look the same as it did prior to even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Because of AI. And so I think it's fascinating, and hold on to your horses because it's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, yeah. And that reminds me, Joe, remember, I'm going to take you back because I wasn't there at the time, but when you realized what happened, late 50s, early 60s, drummers were playing calf heads, right? And, okay. Yes. Remo and
the
Evans.
man himself. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the plastic head comes out. Now, what coincidentally happened at around the same time was the Beatles, and selling how many drum sets per month to 10,000 a month.
Every manufacturer went into 3 shifts a day to try and keep up. Yeah.
And this is like one of those types of changes. Can you imagine? I mean, when I was doing some research, it was actually, I sat down with Remo and went through that whole process. And I wrote a whole paper when I was in university about this, that whole change from the calf heads to the plastic heads. And then the Beatles, and this is practically at the same time, overnight practically, that you would not possibly have been able to produce that many drums or that many musicians, because overnight we all became musicians when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. And then
there weren't enough cows in America. He said there weren't enough cows in America to provide enough cowhide to make the drums we needed.
Isn't that amazing, Joe? I mean, when you think about it, you say, oh my Lord, what would have happened if that change or that development didn't happen at that moment?
Yeah. Well, you have problem, you have opportunity, and you have someone who sees both. And next thing you know, a guy like Remo just jumps in, and Chick Evans too. I mean, the Evans head was doing. They were on the right track before they saw something before other people saw it. So,
Brilliant, brilliant.
and it was trying to solve a problem, right? I mean, calfskin heads had terrible tuning issues depending on where your gig was from the afternoon to the evening. I'll give you an example of a problem that got solved with technology. In-ear monitors, right? This was we celebrated at this past show one of the pioneers of in-ear monitoring, a guy named Marty Garcia. Todd Rundgren was one of the artists who first pioneered to help fund in-ear monitors. He just really wanted that studio experience on stage. And this is in the 80s when I worked for Todd. And so the early in-ear monitors were simply Sony earbuds. We cracked them open, took out the guts, drilled them, and then had molds fitted to Todd's ears at an audiologist, stuffed everything back in these new molds, and then wired them to a little Walkman transmitter or receiver. Over on the monitor side at the stage where I was standing, we had a little FM low wattage broadcast setup, basically transmitter. So every day at the shows, we'd be we're in Montreal, now we're in Poughkeepsie, now we're in New York. The lower band of the FM range, I would find an open channel. And I'd find an open channel on the transmitter, and I'd go over to Todd's little receiver and tune in and listen and go, okay, open channel.
Wow.
Now I'm going to plug in the monitor mix in there. So he'd have his personal mix. He loved it. It was just exactly what he wanted to hear and nothing else, because it blocked out ambient noise. So that worked great in the sound check. And then sometimes we'd be at a city whereby from the afternoon to the evening, a church might take over that low FM band, or a college radio station might take over, because the low band is where all the local, programs would be put on. So sound check, Todd would be listening. Okay, sounds good. Everything's good. Comes, showtime. He puts in his monitors. I turn it up, and it's, have you heard the word of the Lord today? And he'd look over at me like, find me a new channel. And I'd be quickly going around trying to find an open band and then run it over to him on the receiver. Well, and then Marty realized what a problem that was. Wow. And we started finding a more locked in system, and then getting our own, through lots and lots of iterations, our own bandwidth from the government. Ultimately, and in-ear monitors are ubiquitous with everybody, right? But problem, I can't hear very well on stage. I want to hear the band like I hear in the studio. Let's put some in-ear. Let's try the in-ear monitor thing, because Sony had these things called the Buds, Sony Walkmans and earbuds. Yes. Then how to get to the signal in, and then how to get it so that it's consistent and reliable. And so, just technology kept solving these problems. Remo creating, and with Chick Evans competing, creating the synthetic drum head, was a problem being solved by technology. And again, that's what's going to happen over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
AI will probably just speed all of that up.
AI
hopefully I'll take all this and just be able to then reduce any barrier between. What we're trying to do at the time was let Todd be the best artist he could possibly be. Let the artist come out and have no barriers of technology that between artist and audience, artist, heart, audience. So this technology, all it did was help us break down all those barriers so that it became more intimate, and audiences could really kind of and not be separated by any type of quality or other issues. They saw the artist. So
yeah, that was the same kind of thing when the Beatles were playing Shea Stadium and all of these huge venues that was never done before with their little Vox amplifiers.
Sure Vocal Master columns were the PA system at Shea Stadium. You wouldn't see that in a fifth grade play right now.
That's right. And you're talking, and then how many, like maybe 5 years later, we had Woodstock, and in a very short time, and all of a sudden it just exploded because they had a problem. They had to stop touring because they just couldn't hear themselves anymore or anything.
Well, I had a chance to go to Abbey Road Studios last fall, and it's obviously the rooms are been they're beautiful rooms, they're wonderful, but they still have a couple of the old pieces of gear from the Beatles era, and one of them is the mixing console, which literally looks like something out of NASA. I don't know, it's 4-channel or something, but it's just, it's over in the corner, but you go over there and go, ooh, but it just looks like something that was, should be in a museum, and it probably should be. But just that idea of how, and then you look over and here's this beautiful SSL, state of the art console. So now I think that is the continual march of progress in time. But honestly, that drum behind you still looks like the same. It might have looked in the 1800s. It's got a synthetic head now. That's all.
Exactly. Yes, and it's probably more round than it would have the original one would have
Perhaps.
been.
But
yeah. No, well, but it's amazing. But what happens is a lot of these things stay. I mean, drums, of course, will be drums, and there are new technologies, but other things that have been expanding around it, and with this new AI. This technology right now that you're in California, I'm in Montreal, and we can have this conversation. The live streaming, there are technologies out there now that people can play live on the air. There's a system called ELK. People in Scandinavia, in Sweden, actually developed with there's no delay whatsoever, live playing 2-way. Yeah. And now, with this AI, within a week, probably of this conversation will be stuff like you say. Yeah. Amazing. And I think I don't think any of us have even the even imagination big enough to probably understand. I think now what we have to be prepared for, and I think you said it without really saying it, is we have to be prepared for the sudden changes, because technology would be 6 months. That was the word. In 6 months, it's all changed. Now it could be on a daily basis or by noon, right?
Yeah. No, that's, people coming into this industry now will approach it very differently. That's one of the reasons I decided in 2020 early at the show actually to step down and start easing out of my CEO role, because I felt this big change was coming, and I felt it was time for someone else to lead. I took NAMM to where it was, and then I felt it was going to change dramatically with what was coming, and it would take a new leader who could then take a 20, 25-year run with it. And so literally, I just felt it so deep enough in my being that I felt I had to hand it over. I felt it was time to hand it over. But that's the new artists coming up. The new people coming up will be the ones that really are, kind of intuitively native to all these changes. Here's one thing I hope never changes. Now you may cut this out if you want to. What's your favorite drummer joke?
How many people in the band? 3 musicians and a drummer?
How many does it take to change a light bulb?
4.
6.
6.
1 to do it, and 5 to say how much better Steve Gadd would have done it.
Oh yeah. Oh well.
How do you address a drummer in a suit? Will the defendant please rise?
Oh,
right, so that's a few. Just I hope those things never change. I think that's part of the camaraderie of drummers. We get the joke. We're in on the joke, and we actually enjoy them as well.
Yeah, but we've come a long way. It's amazing. What we've learned as musicians, because now percussion or drum set or any of the instruments are just instruments we play. They're the medium. We're the musicians that happen to play whatever. And now with the technology and everything else that's come before us, I think we have to be much larger people, right?
Well, we may actually be the bridge to all that. At the heart of it, of any of this is rhythm. I think melody is evolving, but rhythm is, what is Mickey Hart always said, it goes back to the Big Bang was actually the first downbeat. So rhythm has been, whether it's the seasons or what we bring to music as drummers and percussionists is, I think, the most fundamental part. And as technology continues to evolve, I think the community aspect of music interacting with audiences and being a part and communally making music together, whether it's a drum circle or a festival or a concert. I think the drums and percussion, the rhythm bass is going to actually maybe be the bridge to everything else that comes, because that's the part that connects us with humanity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Think about
Yep.
cultures have different scales and tones and ways to express melody. Rhythm is rhythm. You know, I can hear. One of my wonderful teachers was a instructor, Kel at Berkeley, C.K. Ledzekpo from Ghana, and he taught us how to walk. First day of class, we thought we'd learn all these great polyrhythms. He goes, stand up, and we walked around the class, and he taught us how to walk with rhythm. And so, yes, since humans started, traversing this earth, that was rhythm. And so I learned such a valuable lesson on the role we have as basically connecting us to our humanity. It's rhythm. He didn't start with all this technique. He taught us how to walk with
Nice.
rhythm.
No, that's it's very interesting. I mean, and it's true. I mean, rhythm. I mean, rhythm is everything. I mean, and also, I mean, the other thing that I tell people when I'm teaching also is, I mean, rhythm is not just rhythm. There's melody in the rhythm, and you cannot have melody without rhythm. So, and the rhythm has melodies, and anything you strike, there's a pitch to it. So,
Yep.
this is the basic universal language, right?
So we feel good about ourselves, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yay!
Who
But
needs those singers? Who needs those lead singers anyway? Yeah.
they just get all the attention. So uh, we don't need that.
I
But
don't know.
I was gonna.
I loved when Stuart Copeland was on Lombardi's Drum TV. His message was, "Get on the microphone, get on the microphone. That's where all the royalties are." you know, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help when when your lead singer's a guy named Sting, but get on the microphone because that's where the royalties are.
Yeah, no, that's and that's important. I mean, now you're talking about the business side of things,
Yeah.
and I think it's important for everybody to understand how things work or should work, and being hip to it. I have a question for you. Now that you've stepped down from the whole NAM that you've led for 25 years, what are you looking forward to do? I know you're not going to stop. So,
No, that I'm getting that question a lot, especially from my wife in the other room. I want to explore new aspects of music. I want to explore new aspects of life as a 60-year-old. Honestly, I also want to explore some of my first love, which was the outdoors, and see how some of this transferable skill set with policy and advocacy and other things could be potentially applied to another set of big problems that the world has, which is the ecology in our environment. So
oh yeah.
it's only been 6 weeks at this point, so technically only 2 actually. The 1 month was a phase out, but I still will be involved in NAM. I'm going to be involved in the NAM Foundation for at least 3 years. That was the heart of it to me, the NAM Foundation. NAM shows are great. They made the money. NAM Foundation was the heart where we gave it away. All the work we do to support music education and to feed, kickstart new programs like Little Kids Rock. So I will be involved in the foundation. So I'm going to always keep one part of my energy into helping the cause, which was our vision, which was a world in which everyone makes music. So, but there's a lot I learned about public policy, advocacy, influencing, and there's maybe this last little bit of bringing that over to my first love, which was the outdoors. So it's too soon to tell, but I have definitely a lot more energy. And a bored drummer like me is a very dangerous person to be, or to be around, maybe. So I will focus that energy into some positive aspects and hopefully continue to do what I've loved about NAM, which was, helping to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and I can certainly say I mean I've watched you from the sidelines and run into and spoken to you a number of times, but I know watching that people like you who make the difference in the world, and it's important to take ourselves not to take ourselves seriously, but to take that
Yeah.
seriously. That we should be making a positive change or a positive influence, making the world a better place, even if it's one at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You just hit on something interesting. The idea that we're put in these roles. And yes, you and I have been acquaintances for many, many years. And I can't say we've ever, hung out. I've never been to your house. You've never been to my house. But I still feel this connectiveness to what we do. And I feel that way about lots and lots of people around this world. And I think that's part of, again, the gift of music, that you can
yeah,
find common ground very quickly and feel this camaraderie that's attached to it. So but I also still see or think of myself as this little kid from Western New York who you know had big dreams, and just like somehow, because of this path we were on, we're able to make it happen. So, but never did I, as I was saying earlier, those Breakfast of Champions sessions where I'm up on the stage doing the keynote, the opening, room is packed with thousands of people, giving them free breakfast, help pack the room, by the way. That's that much I know about drumming. Free beer, or in this case, free food.
yes,
Free food fills the room. But I would look at myself, or I'd be on that stage, doing these, and it was always a fun moment to welcome everyone to the show, right? And then the opening keynote would be a little bit of, but just as what's on my mind lately about innovation, or perseverance, or character, whatever the theme was that year. But I would also be looking at myself going, that guy up there, he thinks he's all that. I would just almost like that was a role I was playing, and it was wonderful. But I always try to have this separation of, nope, that's just, and then, that's just another thing I had to do. And so I don't know if many artists are like that too. They can really separate who they are as a core human being from who they are up on the stage.
yeah.
And I
But
think people sometimes in the artist world can get in trouble if they blend those two worlds too much. The guy on the stage wasn't, I'm the guy off the stage. That's who I was. I was this kid who grew up in a small town, and so we have roles to play, but we shouldn't confuse the roles we play for who we are at our core. And again, I think that's, as musicians, we understand that we are servants to the music, not, it doesn't exist for us. So anyway, I always thought that was a good way, and maybe why drummers tend to have, I think, more grounded, not always, but as a general rule, I think we're more grounded than maybe some of the other artist segments, because we take the role seriously, and what we do, we're studious. I mean, we are precise, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And we can laugh, and we can be around
yes,
each other and joke, and and we can be true fans of our peers,
yeah,
and not feel, I don't know. There's lots of drummers I watch where I just want to go home and make myself better. I want to practice, So anyway, I think but the role is different. The role is not the person. That's a role I play or did
yeah,
play. And at the heart of it, I was always just the guy who wanted to make sure all this worked well, make sure the 8 o'clock, the downbeat, all the lights came on,
yes,
and that was now 10 o'clock now at the NAMM show opening. Moment the show opened, everything just, and it works, So
yes.
anyway, I'm not sure
But
if that
it's
made any
good.
sense at all. But the point is, I try to never take myself seriously. I took the role very seriously,
Yeah,
though.
yeah. One thing that is important is when we have the opportunity, and I say to anybody, when you have something that's important to say, and you have the mic, and you have that position, it's important to
Yeah,
deliver that message. It's not about you. It's about now you have the opportunity where you have people are listening and people understand the
yeah.
message gets across. So and you did that well.
It's a
I mean, that
gift.
was that
It's a
was a
gift that
role,
we
but you
had.
delivered this message that was really important for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to say that, it's we can go on for days.
I know.
And,
This is I think we're already over time. By
oh, we got lots of time.
what is this?
No,
The Joe Rogan podcast, a 3-hour one? Come on, man.
oh, we've done very long ones and interesting ones because I don't like to give it a timeline just because sometimes there's things you want to say, and sometimes it just takes longer to actually get to that point. Um,
True,
how
true.
important certain things are, and it's not about what you think; it's about what we see, what we notice, and you want to share that thing, and sometimes even challenge somebody's thoughts or suggest what something could be. Like, this whole thing that's coming up. I mean, we're at the threshold of this whole AI thing, and just for us to be aware. So
Well, you know what these
saying,
conversations are, and again, this format has made this so much more possible, but it the Breakfast of Champions sessions, the opening keynote, in many ways were iterative of this. The concept was those guests, and first of all, you never knew who the guests were. It was always a surprise because that was the point of Breakfast of Champions. You didn't know who was going to come on next. But the point was, these were conversations that I was fortunate enough to be having all day long at NAM. That role gives you the opportunity to meet and to talk to people all around the world in leadership positions. And the Breakfast of Champions to me was a way to take those conversations one-on-one, just me and another person, yet have thousands of people in the room and tens of thousands online eavesdropping. That's the beauty of it. It was almost like I would prep sometimes with the guests the weeks before. And I would say, this is just a conversation like we have all the time on the phone, talking about industry stuff, except this case, there's some eavesdroppers. But I want it to be that intimate conversation. It's not a presentation. And so that's what the theme of Breakfast of Champions was. It was simply others getting to kind of check in on some of the conversations that I was fortunate enough to have all the time. And if a couple of, key leadership points might have come out of that was hopefully inspirational. But this medium of podcasting, these types of video podcasts, gives that same opportunity. You and I could have had this conversation and we would have enjoyed it just for the fun of it.
yep,
If
exactly.
if you called me today and I was home, we would have picked up the phone. We would have just had this conversation regardless. Well, because of this medium, people get to eavesdrop on it and maybe pick something out of it, or maybe just shut it down because it's boring. I don't know. But the idea that this is how we learn. This is maybe this is actually going back to the village where people learned by listening to conversations around the fire or around the
Yeah,
camp.
exactly.
We actually may be going back centuries to the village with this technology. So I think that's a wonderful thing that we get to share that. But that idea of being able to, just really have a conversation that you and I probably would have enjoyed the heck out of no matter what, whether
Yeah.
this was being filmed or not. I would take no difference because I would have enjoyed it just as much if it was just you and I talking. That
Yeah,
makes sense?
yeah, absolutely, and that's my whole concept of this, so that we have those conversations, and you can refer to them for a
Yeah.
long time, and they're there. You want to go back and say, "What he said something interesting," or it sets off something, or
Yeah.
that kind of friendly just talk about
Well, as
things
you
that.
say, in the future, you could put this together by theme. I mean, there were so many things that I pulled out of the interview with Bill Bruford, just as an example. Again, I actually was lucky enough to have dinner with him once in London at an industry event, and the promoters knew that I was a big fan, so they set us next to each other, and we had a wonderful conversation. Our spouses. But I don't remember everything we said. I just remember it was a wonderful evening. Well, I could watch your interview and probably pick up more about his reasons about certain things. I didn't know he went on to college to get a PhD. I did not know that.
Yes.
So it's just, there's so much I've learned. Even because of this, I can go back and check again, as you say, or you could cut and slice these in different ways that are thematically connected. But this medium will, it's like our NAM oral history program, which we have over, I think, 5,300 interviews now of
Wow.
industry participants, digitally stored, protected for in perpetuity. The world will have this 100 years from now. And I think, that to hear, the engineer at Gibson who created the humbucker guitar for Ted McCarty, the humbucker pickup for Ted McCarty, you can read it, but to hear the guy talk about it himself,
Yeah.
that's different. Now
Yeah.
you got something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's important. And, just even things like, Bill Bruford, which was always a mystery to me. I had been trying to get him to come out to COSA for years, and he would write back and say, Aldo, I love what you do, but I don't play anymore. I've retired. And I'm saying, how can you retire? You're one of the greatest drummers ever. And then I think what was important in it's part of that conversation was that it's okay to stop. It's okay to stop when you're one of the best on the planet and you do something else, like you do your PhD. And it's
Well,
okay
that's what
because many
inspired
of
me.
us,
That inspired me because, you know, and it may inspire others who are at transitional points in their life. I'm at a
yeah,
transitional point in my life. He inspired me. I got to tell you that. So, you know, his ability to inspire and teach, whether it's behind a drum set or not, continues.
yeah,
So
yeah, and it's
there's
important
that.
because those questions do come up for all of us. The fear of what happens if, and why would I do this? No, it's okay. Whatever decisions we make, I think are okay because they're thought out, and then you decide to do this instead. There's no problem with that. Others will miss it, but
Yep.
you may not. And you have your inside reasons why you're doing it, but that's an inspiration too. Yeah,
Yep.
like anything. But I did want to thank you for spending this time with me, with us, and your inspiration and your leadership. I mean, and your friendship. Thank you, Joe.
Part of the journey, right? It's our journey. And at some point, we get to stop. I'm older than you probably, and we look back and we just get to watch and go, ah, that was cool. What's next? So yeah, no,
Yes.
this has been our journey and the journey of so many others in this industry. Again, we're part of this cosmic dust here. We had a role in it. Everyone does. And I think we celebrate that. We celebrate that every individual in this ecosystem contributes and adds their part to it. And we want to make sure that we do, all of us, make sure we inspire that to continue, next generation. So anyway, yeah, no, it's
Yes.
best of luck with everything. This is awesome. I love the concept. You're creating community, which is, as rhythmists, we
Ah,
are the fundamental base of the community, and happy to be a part of it.
yeah. Thank you so much, Joe. And as I always say, to be continued.